Island of the Blue Dolphins by Scott Odell, Chapter 11. I was awakened by the waves dragging at my feet. Night had come, but being too tired to leave the sand pit, I crawled to a higher place where I could be safe from the tide and went to sleep again. In the morning, I found the canoe a short distance away. I took the baskets, my spear, and the bow and arrows, and turned the canoe over so that the tide would not take it out to the sea. I then climbed to the headland where I had lived before. I felt as if I had been gone a long time as I stood there looking down from the high rock. I was happy to be home. Everything that I saw, the otters playing in the kelp, the rings of foam around the rocks that guarded the harbor, the gulls flying, the tides moving past the sand spit, filled me with happiness. I was surprised that I felt this way, for it was only a short time ago that I'd stood on this very same rock and had felt that I could not bear to live here another day. I looked out at the blue waters, searching away, and all the fear I had felt during the time of the voyage came back to me. On the morning I first sighted the island, and it had seemed like a great fish sunning itself, I thought that someday I would make a canoe over and go over at once to look at the new country that lay beyond the ocean. Now I knew that I would never go again. The island of the Blue Dolphins was my home. I had no other. It would be my home until the white man returned in their ship. But even if they came soon, before next summer, I could not live without a roof or a place to store my food. I would have to build a house, but where? That night I slept on the rock, and the next day I began to search. The morning was clear, but to the north banks of the clouds hung low. Before long, they would move across the island, and behind them many other storms were waiting. I had no time to waste. I needed a place that was sheltered from the wind, not too far from Coral Cove, and close enough to a good spring. There were two such places on the island, one on the headland and the other less than a league to the west. The headland seemed to be most favorable of the two, but since I had not been to the other for a long time, I decided to go there and make certain. The first thing I found, which I had forgotten, was that this place was near the wild dog's lair. As soon as I drew near to it, the leader came out of the opening of the cave and watched me with his yellow eyes. If I built a hut here, I would first have to kill him and his pack. I planned to do this anyway, but it would take much time. The spring was better than the one near the headland, being a less brackish and having a steadier flow of water. Besides, it was much easier to reach it since it came from the side of a hill, not from a ravine as the other one did. It was also close to the cliff and a ridge of rocks that would shelter my house. The rocks were not so high as those on the headland, and therefore would give me less protection from the wind, yet they were high enough, and from them I could see the north coast and Coral Cove. The thing that made me decide on the place to build my house was the sea elephants. The cliffs here fell away easy to a wide shelf that was partly covered when the tide came in. It was a good place for sea elephants because I could crawl halfway up the cliff if the day was stormy. On fair days, they could fish among the pools or lie on the rocks. The bull is very large and often weighs more than 30 men. The cows are much smaller, but they make more noise than the bulls, screaming and barking through the whole day and sometimes at night. Babies are noisy too. In the morning, the tide was low, and most of the animals were far out, just hundreds of specks against the wave. Yet the noise that they made was deafening. I stayed there the rest of the day looking around, and at night, at dawn, the clamor started again, and I left and went back to the headland. There was another place to the south where I could have built my house, near the destroyed village of Agahasalat, but I did not want to go there because it would remind me of the people who were gone. Also, the wind blew strong at this place, blowing against the dunes which covered the middle part of the island. so that most of the time sand is moving everywhere. Rain fell that night and lasted for 2 days. I made a shelter of brush at the foot of the rock, which kept off some of the water, and I ate the food I had stored in the basket. But I could not build a fire because of the rain, and I was very cold. On the 3rd day the rain ceased, and I went out to look for things in which I would need to build a house. I likewise needed poles for a fence. I would soon kill the wild dogs, but there were many red foxes on the island. They were so numerous that I could never hope to get rid of them, either by traps or arrows. They were clever thieves, and nothing I stored would be safe until I built a fence. The morning was fresh from the rain. The smell of the tide pools was strong. Sweet odors came from the wild grasses in the ravines and from the sand plains on the dunes. I sang as I went down the trail to the beach and along the beach to the sand spit. I felt that the day was an omen of good fortune. It was a good day to begin my new home.